Earlier this week, we also told you how blood plasma therapy was overhyped. It's one of the most widely used treatments in India, but it makes no or little difference when it comes to saving lives. There's scientific evidence against plasma therapy, but it is still part of India's treatment protocols, which is why doctors still prescribe it. In case you missed our report, here's a quick recap. The method of treatment has got way more attention than it deserves. It is called the plasma therapy. But does it work? There is growing evidence now that it doesn't. 18 clinicians, public health professionals and scientists have written a letter. These experts say that India should stop using plasma therapy. India has conducted its own studies, and this is what they found. Whether it was patient mortality or disease progression, blood plasma made no difference. It makes no difference. So who makes these rules? These protocols for treatment. They're made by the ICMR, the Indian Council of Medical Research. It's one of the oldest and largest medical research bodies in the world. It is supposed to follow science and recommend the best treatment plans for doctors to follow. But if one takes a closer look at the ICMR's protocols, science takes a back seat, unfortunately. The pandemic is more than a year old. The virus has mutated thousands of times. Hundreds of studies have been conducted. New treatments have been employed. But guess what? The ICMR guidelines have not changed. They have not been updated since the pandemic began. Can you believe it? Medicines that have been junked, written off by global research are still part of India's clinical guidance. Tonight, we'll give you some examples. We'll begin with HCQ. Do you remember HCQ? Hydroxychloroquine. It was Donald Trump's favorite drug when the pandemic began. As president, he threatened retaliation if India did not share HCQ with America. In hindsight, it was a useless threat. Not only was India willing to share, the efficacy of the drug was in question. The hype around HCQ died fairly quickly. The US Food and Drug Administration, which is America's regulator, US FDA, now advises against using HCQ. And they give two reasons for this. One, because it doesn't work. And two, it can lead to serious health problems like blood disorders, kidney injuries, liver problems, even abnormal heart rhythms. The American regulator had advised against using HCQ way back in July 2020. European governments have also banned this drug, hydroxychloroquine. They issued their orders in May last year, 1 year back. The United Kingdom studied the use of HCQ in 11,000 patients in June 2020. They found that it does not work. But in India, HCQ is still part of the treatment protocol. ICMR guidelines advise this tablet for mild patients. The document does say that this therapy is based on, quote unquote, I'm quoting from what it says, low certainty of evidence. And yet it's still listed under a column called may do, which means a doctor can still prescribe it. For what? And it's not just the ICMR. India's health ministry is also advising HCQ. In its latest guidelines for home isolation, HCQ has been recommended as a prophylactic for caregivers and all close contacts. What is a prophylactic? Something that is given to prevent a disease. So while world's leading regulators have stopped the use of HCQ over health risks, India is still advising it, both for infected patients and for caregivers. And this is just one example. The ICMR's treatment plan features more such unproven drugs for the treatment of the Wuhan virus. Next on our list is Ivermectin. You must have heard of it. It has been listed in the same column as HCQ. Some call it the new hydroxychloroquine. Do you know what Ivermectin is actually supposed to do? It's a tablet used to treat certain roundworm infections, basically infections caused by parasites. The Wuhan virus is a respiratory disease. How can a tablet to treat parasites help? Just like in the case of HCQ, leading regulators feel Ivermectin has the potential to do more harm than good. The US FDA has warned against the use of this drug. In fact, the American regulator received multiple reports of patients who self-medicated on Ivermectin that was intended for horses. They had to be hospitalized. Thankfully, no such reports in India. Similar advice has come from European Medicines Agency as well. That's the European regulator. They say The available data does not support the use of ivermectin for the Wuhan virus. Officials from the United Kingdom, Japan, and the World Health Organization have all issued similar advisories. Merck, which is one of the companies that produces ivermectin, had issued a statement in February 2021. The company studied all findings that were available, and Merck arrived at 3 conclusions. Number 1, there is no scientific basis behind the argument that ivermectin works. Number 2, there is no meaningful evidence to suggest its use in COVID patients. This is the company making the drug. And number 3, and this is important, there is a quote-unquote concerning lack of safety data in the majority of studies. But in India, this drug is still part of the official prescription. And this is not the first time that the ICMR has been caught drifting away from science. In September last year, the world's leading medical journal, The Lancet, had published an editorial. It said, and I'm quoting, "The ICMR has been singled out by experts from straying from scientific evidence." But it looks like the top body that is supposed to guide India's pandemic response through science has been living in a bubble. In January this year, the ICMR put out an internal newsletter which said, despite the doomsday predictions, India has made monumental strides in handling the pandemic. 5 months after those claims, the Wuhan virus has India in its stranglehold. This is the body that's supposed to guide our response. The second wave has spread from urban centers to rural ones, and the master prescription to treat patients in India suggests outdated and written off cures. India needs to urgently update these guidelines. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.